This is the Blairing Out with Eric Blair show with legendary singer, songwriter, and performer Paul Rodgers. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. How you doing, Eric?
I'm doing great. Tell me about your youth and how you got into music.
Ooh, it's hard to know where to start, really. There was always a radio on in my house, and I used to listen to what was popular at that time, you know, and which was very strange. Stuff like I later discovered Frank Sinatra, you know, Love and Marriage go together like a horse and carriage.
Yeah.
Love. I don't know. I won't do it for you.
Yeah, it's a good song,
I think
man.
I probably will. But no, I mean, I can't say that really influenced me. But what I mean is that there was always music around all the time, you know. And I used to see. I used to go to the Saturday morning flicks, we used to call them, the pictures, you know, the cinema, and we'd see Champion the Wonder Horse, and there'd be a great, I think it was Pat Boone or somebody like that sang, Champion the Wonder Horse, you know, this great echo, and I used to think, wow, listen to that voice, that's incredible. It used to echo around the cinema, you know, be about 4-year-old or something, and I think that left a lasting impression on me, you know, because I wondered where these people, who sang these songs, where were they, you know, were they in sort of some bathroom in paradise or something, you know what I mean? And I think that did influence me. And as I grew older, when I got to be about 12, my father bought me a guitar, and this made me eligible for the class band. You didn't have to be able to play, you just had to have an instrument. We made a horrible row for months, you know. But I stuck with it and gradually started to actually learn how to play. It surprised myself, you know. And then the first time I sang, really, I walked up to a show microphone and sang a Little Richard song, something like Good Golly Miss Molly. And they said, okay, you can be the singer now.
As you grew up and you were in your teens, did you become part of a musical community and kind of like rub shoulders with some of the other people that you ended up being in bands with?
To some extent. Well, you see, you got to realize I come from Middlesbrough, which is very local. It's miles away from London, which was where the music scene was at. It was kind of Hicksville, really, as far as music's concerned. I mean, no offense intended to anyone that comes from there. But there was a really great music scene there, actually. When I look back, you know, there was a lot of cafeterias that were playing blues, you know, and there were clubs that you would get early versions, like The Who would be there, you know, wow. Cream. You know, I stood this far away from Cream when they first started out and they were first doing shows. And
you must have been
Spencer
really
Davis
inspired.
Group, which went on to become Traffic. Yeah, so I mean, I saw some great acts, actually, in a very sweaty, clubby conditions, you know.
Yeah.
In the ideal conditions, really, in some ways. And that's what really turned me on. The walls would be sweating with, you know, moisture. And that was rock and roll to me. That was where I got started.
So how did Free come about, the formation of Free?
Well, Free came about because I in my hometown, we had a band, and we decided that we were going to turn professional, go down to London and hit the big time and all of that. And we promptly failed miserably, but the other guys went back, and I stayed on, and I formed a little blues band, and we were playing in the back of a pub in Finsbury Park in London.
Is that Brown Sugar? Or?
It was actually Brown Sugar, yeah. And this long-haired guy came up we used to do 245s, what we call 245-minute spots.
Yeah.
So in between the two, we were just coming off after the first 45 minutes set, and this guy comes up the stage, he had hair down to his knees, you know, and he had flared Levi's on, which was very impressive in those days because you couldn't buy them. Flared Levi's. Cool. And he said, oh, can I jam? I like the way what you're playing and stuff. And I said, well, have you got a guitar? And he goes, yeah, I've got a Les Paul in the car. And I went, oh, Les Paul, you know, bring it in. So it was Paul Kossoff.
Yeah.
And he came in, and we had a jam. And from then, right from that moment, we said, we have to form a band, you know. And so that's how Free was formed.
Was he as great as he was on those records when you first met him, or did he?
Well, yeah, I think we were both, you know, very immature in lots of ways and still trying to find our way. And we were listening to, I mean, he was very into the blues at the time, although he'd been classically trained.
Oh, okay.
He kind of hated that, you know, because I think it was a little bit forced upon him. But I was very impressed with his classical guitar playing, actually, although he never really used it for any reason. But I think it gave him a great foundation for the music. And he was very into blues, and so was I at the time. We listened to a whole range of things, you know, all of the things that were popular at the time, the Beatles, the Stones, Jimi Hendrix, Cream, all of that. but we also ran a little bit deeper and listened to people like Albert King and John Lee Hooker and B.B. King, particularly, Live at the Regal. We used to love that album. And so we had a lot in common, you know. We were listening to the same things, and I could throw a song at him and he would know what it was straight away, you know. And his playing, we kind of were at the same stage of development musically, I think. So we were very compatible musically. Yeah.
So, and you had a really good run with Free. And why did you guys decide to end that? I mean, I kind of know, but I don't know if the people out there.
It's kind of that's that age-old story. We started out. We were about 17. I think Andy, the bass player, was 15. He'd been 14 when he was in the John Mayall's Blues Breakers. You know, so the average age of the band was pretty young, and we slogged around for about 3 or 4 years, and then suddenly we had, and we were a blues band. We thought of ourselves as really as a blues band, although I'd said to the guys, you know, the real way to get recognition and to be considered, you know, a unique band would be to write our own songs. You know, we got very heavily into writing our own songs and moved away from the blues, but we still thought of ourselves in those terms, you know, and we were called an underground band, I guess, which meant it meant that, you know, we could play almost anywhere in Europe and the place would be packed, but we weren't commercially known, you know. That's why when the lid came off it, with All Right Now, suddenly it was like woof, you know, once the press got hold of it and everything like that. And I don't think we were quite ready for it, really. You know, we managed ourselves. We didn't have, we'd moved away from Alexis Corner, unfortunately, because he would have been good to have around at that point. But, you know, and we let it go. And it's sad, really. I sometimes think today, how it would have been if we'd hung in there and got through those difficult times. But, you know, we moved on.
Now, when I was talking to Glenn, he told me that you were actually offered the lead singing position in Deep Purple.
Yes, I was. Now, many years ago. Actually, it was on the last date of Free that Free did in Australia. And I forget whether it was Sydney or Melbourne or Perth, but it was in Australia. And it was our final gig together. And we played with Deep Purple, and I got along really good with the guys, just chatting away, you know. And when I got back to England, I started to get, I don't know, it was a while later, because I had Peace, and then I started to get Bad Company together. And they called from some wild place. Might even have been Australia, but I don't think they were still out there. I think they must have. Anyway, they called from somewhere, and I spoke to them, and they asked me to join the band. But I was forming Bad Company at the time, and it wasn't possible to do.
It wasn't like Bad Company was like a thought. You actually were already putting the pieces together.
Yeah, I forget at what stage we were at, but see, after Free, I had a little band called Peace together, which was a 3-man outfit, and we toured with Mott the Hoople, and that's how I met Mick Ralphs.
Okay.
We started to write songs together, and really, the songs are the lifeblood of any band, I think. Once you start writing songs, it's kind of, the next step is to put a band around that, and away you go, you know. So we were writing songs. Mick had some really good material already. He had Can't Get Enough of Your Love, which turned out to be a huge success, and Ready for Love. And so we started to write together. I had written Bad Company, and we were going to call the band Bad Company and all of that, you know. So yeah, it was very much en route. Yeah,
because that would be very tempting to being that they were the #1 band, Deep Purple at the time and everything. It would have been very tempting to just, I'm going to take the easy way.
I guess I think, you know, and for that reason I probably wouldn't have done it, you know, because I'm not one to take an easy route. I always have my own sense of what's right for me, and I always have, musically anyway, you know, and I, you know, even to this day I'm still like to feel that I'm moving forward, you know, with the new CD and everything.
What are some of the highlights from your time with Bad Company?
Many. I mean, I think back, and I think probably the happiest time was the very first album. We had the name. We didn't particularly have an image or anything. We called ourselves Bad Company, and I hooked up with Peter Grant, who's Led Zeppelin's manager.
Now, did you call him, or did he come after you?
I called him. Because one of the things I'd thought about Free was that we really needed a wise head when we hit that level of success.
And so you went for the
Yeah.
top. You got the best guy
That's
you
what
could.
I thought. I thought, well, who's the best manager? Who's the best band in the world? Led Zeppelin, without a doubt. Who manages them? Peter Grant. So I called him, and as it happened, he was putting together a record company, their own individual thing called Swan Song.
Yeah.
And they were looking for talent. So so he came along. Actually, what happened was that the Zeps were about to record one of their albums, and they had this huge big mansion in Headley Grange in England, huge big old haunted mansion, and they had a mobile studio outside, and they were delayed by a couple of weeks for some reason. And Peter said to me, if you guys are ready, why don't you just jump in there and put a few tracks down?
That's awesome.
So we went in and we put the lot down. You know, we just
Yeah.
and the great thing about those days was it was very unformed. You know, we had no idea what we had to try and achieve, except that we had all these songs and we wanted to put them on tape. You know, and we made this album. Boom, there it was. And it went to number 99 when we first started touring in the States, and then by the end of the tour it was number 1. So we were like, wow, what did we do? You know, how did we manage that? You know, and it was just very natural. We just played the music.
How did you get Boz Burrell into the band? How was he brought to Bad Company?
Well, we auditioned a lot of bass players. Mick and myself were there. We were, you know, guitarist, singer. You had that together, and we were writing the songs. It was easy enough to call in Simon because I'd known him from Free and I knew he was a good drummer. And the bass player was a problem. We tried a lot of different bass players.
They're always a problem.
Yeah, you know, it's a very underrated instrument, and I've always I always like a good bass player. Because
Yeah.
a band is only as strong as its weakest point. You've got to have a good bass player in there. And we tried a lot of different players until Boz came along, you know, and then suddenly he was just right.
He's in the groove.
Yeah.
And he showed up for one of the auditions.
Yeah, well, a lot of people showed up. We were auditioning people. We were very cruel, actually, because I remember coming to the station one day, Mick and myself, we were driving to the station, and there was this guy. We were going, I wonder what he looks like. I hope he looks okay. You know, it's like not like way too tall or way too small
Yeah.
or anything, you know. And there was this guy standing outside the station with his guitar and everything. I went, oh my God, he's bald. Keep driving. Keep driving. And we weren't very nice, actually.
Hey, it's rock and roll, man. It's rock and roll. That's the way it is.
So anyway, but you know, Boz is a very good player. He played a lot of jazz, and he's a bit of an aficionado in that area, and he brought something very musical to the bass guitar.
Yeah,
which is good.
it is very melodic, and he does a lot of good runs, just enough, not too much, not overplaying.
Yeah.
So why did Bad Company disband then in the early '80s?
Well, now let's see. It was the Bad Company thing was a wonderful, magical roller coaster, at the end of which I felt life was getting a little bit unreal for me, and I wanted to come off the road.
Yeah, you guys were on. I mean, you had your own Learjet that you were, or rented a Learjet that I've seen you guys.
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
That's pretty heavy duty.
Yeah, what I used to prefer was the Vickers Viscount, actually, which was a four Rolls Royce engine. It was a prop job, but I used to love that. It used to make a sound like before it took off.
And that wasn't unnerving for you to be able to hear the engines rumbling through your gut.
No, but we did have some very unnerving flights, actually, because it was not a domestic flight. We would fly sometimes to get to a show when all the domestic flights were grounded, and we flew through some very heavy-duty storms, actually, which were frightening. I remember looking out the window and seeing, you know, an ocean of sort of dark clouds with you know, have you ever seen lightning from above? It's very strange. The cloud lights up like this, and we shouldn't. I'm looking out and thinking we should not be up here, and the planes go like this, you know.
At that point, you were probably praying.
I probably was mumbling under my breath.
So you pretty much you needed a vacation from the whole roller coaster ride.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to come off the road, and actually what it meant doing, really, because things were so intense, it meant leaving the band, and so that's what I had to do, you know. And I came off the road, and I put a studio in my house, and I made a solo album, and then Jimmy Page came over, and I'm probably running away with your story here. But, yeah.
It's okay.
But, I mean, I wasn't, you know what, it's funny, I couldn't really stay away from it for too long. I didn't get very far away from music, and I didn't stay off the road for too long, about 4 or 5 years, I think, and then I was back on.
Well, now afterwards you did the Cut Loose, your first solo album, Cut Loose.
Yeah.
That was the first musical album that you put out after leaving Bad Company, correct?
Yeah, that was in about '84, I think.
And when did you decide that you wanted to go do that? I mean, how did that come together?
Well, it came together from putting a studio in my house, and then I was able to layer things. And when you write a song, one of the things that it's fascinating to think on is where the drums will be, where the guitars will be, where the harmonies will be, where the piano will be, all of the, the whole sound picture. And you can hear it in your head. And often enough, I would take it along to the band, and we'd take it this way or that way, depending. But having my own studio gave me the opportunity to put exactly what I felt were all the instruments where they should be, and just to build up a sound picture, you know what I mean? And I found that to be very interesting, and that's how I came to record the solo album and play all the instruments on it.
Now, getting back to Jimmy Page, what was your relationship with him, and at what time did you meet him? Was it before the whole Swan Song thing, or did that bring him into your life?
Well, strangely enough, we've crossed paths over the years on many occasions.
Okay.
Free and Led Zeppelin came up at a similar time. I remember they did Superseders. I remember seeing posters for them and thinking, "Wow, those guys are doing great." Look at the size of the ads. They were really sort of getting there. And I met Robert Plant in Birmingham even before Led Zeppelin formed. Matter of fact, I mean, he came back. We did a show with Alexis Corner, this jazz musician that was a kind of mentor for people like the Rolling Stones, for a lot of people, and for Free as well. He was like a wise head in a very crazy business, and it was good to ask him, like, who's the best manager? What's the best record company? Tell me about music. He was really, really good, knowledgeable. And we did a show with him there, and Robert got up and sang, and he was very into the blues. He was great. And he came back to we stayed at what was called bed and breakfast places in those days, which was literally bed, breakfast, and out, And he came back for a cup of tea and a chat, and he said that he'd been offered a gig down in London, man, with this guy called Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
Had I heard of him, And I said, yeah, I've heard of him. He's everybody's talking about him. He's a great musician. And I said to him, and he said, yeah, I think I should go down and do it, And he eventually did.
Was he kind of bragging to you, Paul?
I don't know, I think he was probably asking everybody that had come up from London to get a feedback on this thing, whether or not he should make this big move, and he did, and Led Zeppelin was there. So we have crossed paths over the years, and of course we were together under the same management with Peter Grant, so we'd see each other in the office, and things like that, the World's End office in King's Road. And and Jimmy, when I put the studio together, was very curious about it. So you got a studio together, man, let's check it out, So he would come over, and we just started to write songs. Again, you see,
Yeah.
It's a songwriting thing. And we got a call from Clapton's management. They were doing a tour in America for multiple sclerosis for Ronnie Lane. And
the arms benefit.
Yeah, the arms benefit.
Yeah.
Clapton was on there, and Joe Cocker, and a lot of great people. And could we put a band together and come out there and play? And we sort of went, we've got about 5 songs. But it was a challenge, So we did. We put a little rhythm section together and just went on out there and just did it, And that's how the firm got started.
Oh, okay. See, have voice, will travel. You know?
Yeah.
It's like, just make it happen. So what were some of the highlights of being in the firm?
The firm, well, it was a fascinating thing because Jimmy had a lot of musical ideas, and they needed lyrics because he's not particularly a lyricist, and they needed that final piece in the jigsaw. And the first thing we put together, he brought along a tape of this huge piece of music it went all over the place, and it had very strange timings and tempos, and I was like, wow. And it was very much a challenge to write lyrics on this. I think the chorus is in something like, he told me afterwards it was in, I think, 9/4 time or something, so that's why it goes down, down, da-down, it seems to have extra beats in it, And I wrote lyrics for Midnight Moonlight Lady. And that was pretty cool, we did some good things. We did that, and we did Radioactive and Live in Peace and Satisfaction Guaranteed, which is a song I still do in my live set now. Magic Carpet Ride,
Why did you turn down the offer '86 to rejoin Bad Company?
Well, in '86, there was never an offer for me to rejoin Bad Company at that point. No. What there was, in fact, I mean, in that time anyway, I was involved with the firm.
Okay.
So I couldn't have joined anyway. But they did call and ask me if they could use the name. And I was very reticent about it. I didn't think it was a great idea, and I still don't think that it has been a great idea.
It's kind of like letting another man sleep with your wife.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you look at other bands that have kept that integrity together, like, say, the Eagles or you know, any number of bands, they've come back together in later years, and people have been very glad to see them. But if you start bringing in other people and you dilute the thing and make it, I don't know what happens.
Like what happened to Asia. Well, that's a perfect example. You know, they thought they could replace John Wetton. Come on, John Wetton is the guy that put Asia together. You know.
I don't want to name names.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
But you know, I mean, it's like. You know, I'd leave it alone is what I thought. But the manager called me and said, oh, you know, you've got the firm and you're okay, and these guys need the burnout. And I said, oh, who am I to stop them? Go ahead, you know. Yeah. So off they went.
Okay, you co-wrote some material for The Law. That was after the firm.
Well, you know, The Law was that period of time was a funny period of time for me because I wasn't really writing songs, and I you know, and I wanted to make an album and do something and put it all together. But I didn't want to write the songs, so I thought, well, this album I won't do the writing. I'll just have, you know, people sending their songs.
Yeah, like Bryan Adams and David Gilmour.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
From various different ways. Actually, Bryan was a friend of Bill Hahn, the manager. We put it together. So we had Kenny Jones on the drums, myself singing. And what the plan was, we were going to take it in different directions, a blues direction or a soul direction or a this or a that or that, and bring in different people. That was the plan. And then we got Chris Kimsey in as an engineer. And he was a friend of Brian's. I think that's how I met Bryan, actually. Yeah.
Well, from what I've read, he's a big fan of yours. You're like a big influence. I mean, that's what I read on his singing style and his songwriting style, so forth.
He's a very cool dude.
So it must have been really fun to work with him.
Oh, it was. Yeah, we did a couple of things. We did, what was it? Nature of the Beast, and he played on that as well. It's a great song, very mean lyrics. I said to him, wow, these lyrics are mean, man.
What are some of the highlights of your solo career?
Well,
so far.
When I first did the blues album, the tribute to Muddy Waters.
That rocks.
Yeah, thank you. That was Grammy nominated, and it meant that, see, the Law, I wasn't writing songs. I wrote the title song, Laying Down the Law, and a couple of other things, but I found that I had this writer's block. I wasn't writing. And the ideal thing for me was in going back to the blues, because that's where I started out writing songs, you know. And doing the Muddy Waters tribute was great for me because I went back to the blues and I went back to being creative with the blues, you know. And from there, it's a short step to writing your own songs, you know. So I recommend anyone that wants to be a songwriter to kind of do that, you know. I almost rewrote a lot of the songs, like Rolling Stone and things like that, because there's such a great basis there for you to work from. It was very creative, and we got in a lot of great guitar players. Brian May from Queen.
Oh, you've played with all the great guitar players.
Yeah, it was a beautiful thing. One of the highlights of that whole album was the fact that nobody said no. You know, when we called and said we'd like to appear on the blues, everybody said yes. It was amazing. This list of incredible artists began to build up. Jeff Beck said, "I'll do the whole album, man." Yeah, which was cool, you know, and it's a testimony to the power of the blues as well, really, because some of the guitar players aren't blues guys particularly, and they'll be the first to tell you, you know, but blues and rock and pop, it's actually quite a close thing, you know. And you know, if you can play rock, you can probably play blues too.
How did the late '90s reformation of Bad Company come along?
It was a process of meetings, actually, because what happened was Peter Grant, the manager, passed away, unfortunately, and we all went to the funeral. And it was the first time that any of us had ever been together in the same room for 20 odd years, you know, and we found that it was kind of okay to see each other again, you know. After the explosion of parting company and all the things that that had gone on in between, you know, such as them going on with the name and all of that. And it was kind of like seeing old brothers again, you know, family again, so it was pretty cool. And then we had another meeting after that to do with the catalogue, and somebody suggested putting an anthology together, because it hadn't been done, of the real Bad Company. And it was a short step then I said to make what would make it really interesting was if we put some new material on, went in the studio, boom, which we did. And Hey Hey was the #1 on the rock charts, and then Hammer of Love was in the top 5. So it was pretty good.
The solo tour you're on right now, where's this going to take you now?
Well, it's going to take me into next year. Next year is going to be very busy. My CD Electric has been released in Europe and Japan.
And what can we expect from that? What's the sound like on that?
It has. It's a great sound. I recorded, mixed it at Bryan Adams' studio up in Vancouver.
Cool.
And it has. All of the songs are different. Really, it's a Paul Rodgers sound, you know, very much a continuation of what you will find in Free and in Bad Company, because those bands were my sound in lots of ways. There are rock songs, there is a power ballad, there is an acoustic song, which I'm really fond of, which I use a 12-string acoustic through a Leslie speaker, which is normally for
the one that's
Hammond organ,
yeah.
And then with a flute. There's all kinds of things on there.
Who's your favorite sex symbol?
My favorite sex symbol. Does it have to be a man or a woman?
It's up to you, bro.
I think Elvis Presley is probably the greatest.
He was your idol.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite female sex symbol?
My lady, Cynthia Kerrick.
This is a Blairing Out with Eric Blair show with Paul Rodgers, signing off.
The Blairing Out Show.